What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. I have a rare opportunity. I have a room full of empty tables and shelves full of parts since my latest large-scale mock project is taken apart and I haven't started a new one yet. So, like a desperate teen in an 80s comedy, I'm gonna throw a house, I'm gonna build some giant mocks. I'm going to choose from the biggest battles in Star Wars, space battles excluded, and challenge myself to cast aside detail, technique, and craftsmanship and focus on building the biggest, beefiest mocks possible. This challenge is going to be harder for me than you might think, as I tend to build smaller, more detail-oriented mocks. But just like the Imperials trying to build a Death Star, I'm trying something new and hoping it doesn't blow up in my face. So don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. I think everybody already knows where I'm starting. You can't do any kind of large Star Wars battle challenge without including the Battle of Geonosis, the opening act of the Clone Wars and one of the biggest on-screen battles in all of Star Wars, packed with clones, droids, and whatever this was supposed to be. After planning this, I immediately hopped on and started playing Republic Commando for, research purposes. I'm just kidding. I got building. This mock is going to be a real challenge because dark orange is the main color used to build most kinds of Geonosis mocks, and it's worth its weight in gold, so my supplies are pretty weak, but I'm going to use every part I can, including medium nougat, to try and cover as much of these base plates as possible. Luckily, Geonosis is pretty flat, so I just need one simple layer of plate to cover up the base plate. If this were a different kind of challenge, I would add multiple levels of plate and some wedge plates to try and create a more detailed surface, but that's not really the goal with this video. Just as I feared, my dark orange and medium nougat parts barely made a dent in the vast expanse of the mock, so I decided to yeet two of the end base plates in an effort to make this mock even smaller and more doable. And in my darkest hour, I turned to a color of part that has never let me down, and it's none other than the glorious dark tan Lego piece. You can't keep getting away with it! Sadly, even with these reinforcements, I still didn't have enough to cover the rest of the build, so my last resort was dark gray tile, which will represent some kind of bedrock or stone in the ground, I guess, which is really stretching it. I do have one more trick up my sleeve to get this terrain done, and that is add a literally complete new mock to cover up the last patch of base plate. This is a section of my second Battle of Geonosis mock, complete with clones and Geonosians teaching this clone how to fly. With the terrain torture mercifully over, it's time to build a couple random structures or sad attempts at spires to give the mock what little height I can. So far, this video has been a great showcase of how sad my dark orange collection is. But with everything in place, it's time for the only thing anyone really cares about anyways, the minifigs and vehicles. I have a pretty solid lineup of separatist vehicles, some of which people will claim weren't actually part of the Battle of Geonosis, but to that I say, that's rough, buddy. This droid cannon is aimed way too high, so I gotta adjust that. You may be wondering what could possibly stand up to such a formidable lineup of war machines, and fear not, the Republic has the ultimate weapon in their massive war pocket, the ATT. It's being flown in by a massive dropship piloted by the most versatile clone trooper Lego has ever made. Bruh. Now that the vehicles are facing off, it's time to fill in the empty spaces with figs. I'll have lots of clones pouring towards the front lines, being fended off by dark tan Geonosian battle droids and their much scarier, more competent brethren, the B2 battle droid. The stage is set and the battle has begun. Charging through the action, we have famous faces like Kit Fisto, Delta Squad, Mace Windu, and Darth Jar Jar. I was much more pleased with this mock than I thought I would be. The weird coloration of the terrain actually works in its favor, making this Geonosis mock more unique and interesting. I was also able to include a decent amount of recognizable features, and of course got to use the massive dropship. This being the Separatists' home court, they're throwing everything they can at the clones, including this massive spider droid who was so excited to get to the front lines, he accidentally squished his commander on the way. This may come as a surprise, but this is officially the largest Geonosis mock I've ever made. Those expensive parts really have a chokehold on what I can do, and while definitely not the best or most detailed, it represents the Battle of Geonosis pretty well. Okay, some of you may be sick of clone vs droid battles, so we're gonna do an Imperial mock next. Unfortunately, while the original trilogy has many wonderful things in it, massive ground battles aren't one of them. But we are stepping away from the Clone Wars and going back to a battle that struck awe and amazement in young Coconut when he first saw it. I'm building none other than my all-time favorite battle in Star Wars, the Battle of Naboo, which takes place in the Phantom Menace, where the Grand Gungan army faces off against the Trade Federation droids on the plains of Naboo. Now, I'm not going to pretend this isn't a 90s CGI battle on a Windows desktop background, but boy do I love it. The big downside to building this scene is it's a long, flat, boring green base. I don't want you guys to suffer like I did while building such a boring base, so here's a motivational droid to keep you occupied for a bit while I work.
I was building on the lecture. Verses coming daily under pressure.
As the mission and the nightmares were coming to an end, I was thinking about what else I could add to this scene to make it more interesting, and I remembered I had a statue head scene around the jungles and plains of Naboo. I know they aren't in the actual battle, but anything to make this build a little bit more interesting. I'm gonna bury the head in a hill to make it less conspicuous and build up around it with green brick. You may have noticed this mock shrunk from 2 base plates wide to 1. Turns out having to place down hundreds of green bricks really makes a man think about how big a mock really needs to be. The hill looks a little goofy, but that's fine because I have the Lego equivalent to makeup, grass pieces. Able to hide and cover up almost any mistake or blemish. Makeup, I mean grass pieces, are an essential piece of any Lego builder's collection. I won't, however, be covering this whole mock in grass because I don't hate myself. This end of the mock looks a little naked, but don't worry, I have just the thing. Big ol' MTTs. I'm so pumped to be able to use my Gungan army again in a mock. It's been far too long. I've got all kinds of Gungans, and you know I got those battle droids. I'm gonna have most of the Gungans fleeing, since as soon as that shield went down, they realized they weren't ready to die for a woman wearing crazy dresses. The battle droids are gonna be moving forward in front of the MTTs like the chads they are. Like I said, this is the part of the battle after the Gungan shield goes down, and they are just hightailing it back to the swamps, and frankly, I don't blame them. Their whole purpose was just to act as a diversion to get the droids out of Theed so Padme and her future husband could blow up the core ship. I do have a few brave Gungans holding the line so their buddies can escape. One even got a lucky throw-in and speared a droid. Others have been captured and are being rounded up to give piggyback rides to the droids. Building this really gave me the old rose-tinted goggle treatment, since the reason I have all these parts and figs in the first place is because the first large-scale battle mock I made was the Battle of Naboo. Even in all the chaos of the battle, there are a few droids taking lunch in the back since, hey, no one said they were getting paid to skip lunch. I had to save the best and biggest battle for last, and it's none other than this. While that may be Yoda's greatest duel, it certainly doesn't make the cut for this challenge, but the Battle of Malastare sure does. This battle takes place during the beginning of the legendary Zillo Beast arc of the Clone Wars, and has maybe one of the biggest droid forces ever on screen, which gets absolutely obliterated by a prototype bomb dropped by the Republic. But before the bomb is dropped, there is a face-off of epic proportions, and one that I'm pretty sure the Republic would have lost if it wasn't for the science bomb. Malastare is a watery reddish color, and the closest piece I have to that is, no surprise here, dark tan. I built this mock in 2 sections that can be spread apart from each other with clones on one and droids on the other, since they're spaced pretty far apart in the back. Malastare also has really flat and simple terrain, like your terrain assignment was due in 10 minutes and you haven't even started yet simple. Some glowing green plants, which of course I forgot to add, and small towers of rock, mostly all on the Republic side. The native species here is the infamous Dug, one of whom tries to murder young Anakin in a pod race. And their contribution to the battle were these massive slingshot looking things. I decided I had to have at least one, so I threw together a real simple slinger since, you know, they were so effective in the battle. And that's really everything I can do for the terrain. This video should have been called I build the most tedious mocks ever. From placing down row upon row of brick to arming hordes of minifigs, I felt like I was that one guy from that one movie doing that one thing.
Please, no! No! No!
At least this battle had lots of ATTEs, and I purposely made this one big enough to include 2. The clones in this battle were just trying to hold off the droids long enough for the Republic to drop the bomb, so instead of charging they're going to be holding the front line while this guy takes a nap. It seems like the Seps threw everything but the kitchen sink at the clones. There are AATs, crab droids, dwarf spider droids, and of course, regular battle droids marching en masse to get deactivated for plot purposes. So this was definitely the most boring one from a building standpoint, but has the largest battle and the most vehicles of any of the mocks today, so I guess mission accomplished? But I mean, given what I had to work with, this was the best I could do. I know there weren't any 501st ATTEs in the battle either, but this was all I had, plus Rex was there, so maybe he brought some with him. You know, maybe the reason there were so many different kinds of droid machines there is because the Seps were about to get the new inventory of war machines, so they just dumped all the old models here. In the middle of everything, we have the space where the Zillo Beast is peacefully sleeping underground before Palpy yeets him off to Coruscant. Thankfully, that was the last build. Don't get me wrong, I love a good giant Star Wars battle in Lego, but if I have to cover one more base plate and an endless layer of brick, I'm gonna need the Jar Jar laser treatment. While this video was a fun change of pace from the mocks I normally do, I'm ready to get back to the smaller, more detailed builds and save the big mocks for my weekly building series. I think Geonosis might be my favorite of the builds today, but Naboo is a tight second. Let me know which of these builds was your favorite down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time, but until then, happy building.